Tony Blair Institute has a really disproportional influence on what's going on around the world. The assisted dying bill. Do we want the state to be able to kill people? You can't just start cancelling elections either. Like we've seen some of that happen in here. We've seen what's happening in France at the moment. You start doing lawfare and trying to like stop people being standing and trying to get them in prison on trumped up charges. It's very dangerous, right? That is a powder keg. If you don't have a sense of what's possible and the demos and the public and citizens and the majority of people being able to assert ourselves and say we're not having it, then we're in real trouble.
Hello and welcome to the Resistance GB podcast. My name's Emma Dunwell and today I'm joined by Alan Miller, the co-founder of the Together Declaration. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Good, Emma. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So could you just tell everyone a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Together to get us started?
Sure. My background was in events and hospitality. I actually started my life putting on acid house parties a long time ago, traveling around the world, putting them on, then coming back to London. I did a lot of the late night events around the country, Liverpool, Manchester. We did some of the first Ibiza reunion parties, and then we went on to launch. I was a co-founder of the old Truman Brewery. At the same time, I was very involved in the kind of UK garage movement. So we brought a lot of recording studios in there. We put a lot of DJs, producers, people from fashion and the arts, and we created a kind of what's now known, and a lot of people do, but a bit of a kind of unique thing at the time, which was bringing lots of people together to create a destination hub. We had a place called the Vibe Bar, and it had the spirit of acid house, where we were quite independent and lots of different people that all the kind of jobs for life and all that kind of thing had gone, and people were having to explore how to kind of be creative and entrepreneurial in many ways, kind of children of the Thatcher generation, but and so it took that kind of we did that thing for quite a long time, actually for 20 years, and then it sort of was cited as examples of urban regeneration and all that kind of thing, and then we got a lot of pressure actually, and from what we realised is that it became a case that the police and councils were now targeting hospitality venues and closing them down, saying they were contributors to crime and antisocial behaviour. And we really discovered what it was. It was when Sir Bernard Hogan House said, well, you can make money from these places and it's all cut, but 50% of them have got to go because they're crime creators. And so that led me, because that was a real labour of passion, and we worked with a lot of people over many years. When people said initially it would never happen, we came from the world of music and events, and we put on awards ceremonies. We had fashion and art events, and people said it would never work there in East London. It was really kind of a very different place when we went in there in 1994, 95. And people were going, how'd you get there? No one will ever come from the West End to Brick Lane. It's difficult to imagine now. But it led me to launch something called the Nighttime Industry Association, which was a representative for a lobbying organisation for nightlife, really. And we did all sorts of campaigns. I sort of co-founded it and was the chair for 6 years. We ran campaigns like Save Fabric to get Fabric reopened and to challenge all sorts of things, and represented nightlife with mayors, with councils, with police. I brought over people from Berlin and Amsterdam to advise Boris and the team to get nighttime advisors and forums to represent the fifth biggest industry in Britain and say we're not these kind of illegal, badly behaved criminals. We're actually contributing to soft power in Britain, and we should really be part of your kind of trade bodies representative internationally. And all of that went really well as it happens. It was really good. We were really effective with the Treasury, with the Home Office. I said we need to have the police and the council sitting next to us and have honest conversations, because they got an issue with resources. But you don't just shut down these cultural hubs, places where we get the next generation of music and entrepreneurs. It all went really, really well. I was speaking internationally in all sorts of countries about why we should keep places open until lockdowns. And then the shutters came down, and a lot of the people that were saying we need open places and 24-hour cities that were exciting and dynamic and interesting, with quiet places and all of that with them, and curate them and be ambitious and exciting, it all changed, and we got into lockdowns, and that kind of led into me. Initially did something called open for all with over 1,000 venues that said we're not going to have papers please society, we're not going to have these so-called vaccine passports to get in, that's not how we're going to do things. And they were very brave, these venues, because you get held accountable and you can lose your license by councillors or police who are not happy with your behaviour. So they were very brave to do that. We all came out. But then we realised that we were still sort of talking a bit behind the scenes to Boris and the people there. At the very start, we were sort of saying, well, you know, from hospitality point of view, I was doing this, right? Well, what about this? What about that? And we realised that they just had stopped listening.
Yeah.
And we did this campaign called Open for All. And when he finally came out with, oh, we're going to have Freedom Day, but by the way, we're going to have vaccine passports, my phone went off the hook. We spoke to everyone. I was like, look, we got to get some. They're just ignoring us. We're all in silos. They've kind of shut down the public arena with lockdowns, and they're just mugging us off. And we were going to have to do something about it. So the idea was we got a meeting on in a club in London. And there was about 150 people, campaigners, organisers, citizens, people that had been kind of quite vocal, and said, let's do something called Together. It could be like an umbrella type thing where we have a lot of us that try and pull different sectors, faith, non-faith, basically everyone who didn't like, who was opposed to lockdowns. We had 6 key principles. Yeah. And, you know, sometimes people are really critical of Together. It's fair enough. We're like free speech, discuss it. It's important to thrash things out. But we've got principles. And there were 6 principles we were launched on. And we try and uphold and maintain all of our activity around those principles, around free speech, around no lockdowns, around choice, around kind of medical freedom, you know, making choices. It's difficult, that conversation, because you have to have informed choice, and you guys know all about that. But, you know, that was really the incarnation. And now we've kind of, you know, 3.5 years down the road, we had our 3rd year event in Westminster a little while ago, and we do a lot of campaigns, as you know. So that's the kind of potted history of how I've got here.
Yeah. This podcast is able to happen thanks to NutriHealth 365 vitamins. For information on how vitamin D crucially supports your immune system, click the link below. More on NutriHealth later.
So Together didn't exist at the start of the lockdowns. I mean, had we have done, we would have all been in a much better position. And I think that it came out, it was a direct consequence of the attacks on citizens and all of us. So it was attack of, and I was on the phone to various people and saying, look, it doesn't matter that you've got 300,000 followers. They're not listening to any of us. They're not listening to you. And we need to get together and somehow represent something bigger. And we got a couple of 100,000 signatures quite quickly. And that kind of morphed, and we went to 350,000. We brought 2 petitions to Downing Street to say, 1, we don't want to have vaccine passports, and 2, we don't want to have a mandate, right, with the jabs, and that there should be a situation where these things are discussed with the public. And, you know, you can't just upend a whole, like, centuries of, you know, first do no harm, and, you know, just the whole principle around autonomy and around freedom and like parliamentary scrutiny and all of those things were just being jettisoned. So they were the things that led into it. My background before, it was in music and dance and events. And, you know, I've made a whole lot of new friends. I mean, obviously we had Brexit before that as well, but I come from a background that was very different. My historical place was different. I was involved. What people say, these words now, are very different to what they were then. But, you know, Brick Lane was a very different place. The National Front used to organise there. I come from a place that I was from the left then. Yeah. And I was an anti-racist back then, when it meant something actually very different to what people say now. And it's been a wild journey. I mean, anyone who says it's not a wild journey, I can't really believe, because there's all these new people that I met through lockdowns and through these protests and all of that, and fellow travellers. And, you know, I'd seen it, people might have experienced this with Brexit before, those that are old enough to see it, but, you know, people became really vociferous, either, you know, and arguing one way or the other. But the whole sense in which trying to work things out and discuss it and argue it, and also not just get put in a corner, literally, right? It happened with lockdowns, but just told to be quiet, put your hands on your head and go over there. But, like, how do we work things out and resolve them? And some people think it's really naive that you're just being a bit silly when you do that, because, you know, there's an expectation perhaps that there can be a civil space where we can engage and all that. But I happen to think that if you don't have that, if you don't have a sense of what's possible, and the demos and the public and citizens and the majority of people being able to assert ourselves and say we're not having it, then we're in real trouble, because the other alternatives are very problematic.
So where do you see the state of the country at the moment, and where it's going? I mean, there's a whole amalgamation of issues that one could coin globalist agendas that seem to encompass all of those losses of liberties and freedoms. What do you think is the most pressing issue to you at the moment?
Well, let's take the first question first, because I think it's really where I see things now. It's a big mix of things going on. So on the one hand, it's very concerning. A number of attacks. If you think about everything from the attacks on free speech, on the rights to protest, some people want to be a bit partisan on the idea of free speech or the rights to protest. It's like I want it for my people or my thoughts or my views, but not for those people. We got to have it for everyone. Yeah. So the attacks on that, we've seen post Southport, we've seen some of the two-tier justice, the judiciary, the weaponising of that, the question of borders, the question of if you raise questions of integration versus multiculturalism, that somehow you're beyond the pale, perhaps you could go to prison for saying things. These are really serious issues, right? And a number of things across the boards, since pre-COVID, but just thinking that the public is dirty and infectious and evil and mad, bad and dangerous, and needs these technocrats, the great and the good, the few of them that go to a few places Keir says he's Davos over Westminster. He doesn't like the messy business of politics and the demos where you get questioned. Those things are real problems. But at the same time, I'm very, very excited, and I don't like optimism or pessimism, but I'm very confident in the belief in our people. What I mean by our people is everyday people, is the public, the people we saw who came out anti-lockdowns. I mean, I've never seen anything like that before, right, in Britain, where people that were like your next door neighbours or people from up and down the street, they've never been involved in politics before, and they're out there. I'm like, wow, this is inspiring, right? And people say, oh, people never do anything, and they're all just... It's not the case. It is the case that many more perhaps did not, but many changed their views as they went along. And the question is, how good are we at going out and convincing them or inspiring them? It's on us as well. Yeah. But I'm also optimistic about what I've seen a lot change, right? I mean, look at America. The people that 4 or 5 years ago were being spied on, called pariahs. We've got... Bobby Kennedy Jr., we got Jay Bhattacharya, the head of the National Institutes of Health in America. It's unbelievable, right? Great Barrington Declaration, Jay Bhattacharya being called all sorts of names. Now he's in that position. We've seen a real smorgasbord of people in the Trump team that represents populism. A lot of them used to be Democrats, right? Of an old left, the Republicans. Who are they? It's a new thing that's happened, and the public in America, and I think in similar ways here, you've got institutions like the EU and all sorts of others, WF, WHO, that have had lots of influence on globalism. But the public, when we sort of make an assertion, or when we sort of assert ourselves, or when we stand up and say, no, we're not going to do that, or we challenge things, or we hold people accountable, and we exercise ourselves, the might of that is significant. And we can have a disproportionate impact on things. We can shape and curate things. A lot of it is getting our muscles back into shape historically, right? The public, citizens in the modern period, it's been us that have made things. It's not been smart people go, oh yeah, you should have this, have that. There's been a bit of that. But in the modern period, a lot of it's been as a consequence of brave people, courageous people saying, well, actually, I will risk my life or my tongue or my eyes for the right for free speech, to speak freely, right? I'll be a heretic. It's been others that have been martyrs that have stood and fought. We've got a whole history of it. The English Civil War, that Peterloo, we've got, right the way through civil rights, and there'll be lots of contesting ideas about all those things I just said, right? People like to say, well, I'm a conservative and I'm a radical and I think this, and that's great. We thrash those ideas out. But the point is the spirit, I think, the spirit of humanity as it's come to be known in the modern period is one where we seek freedom, we seek a sense of independence, but also it's mixed, right? There's also a sense where we would like some protection and safety and other people to do some things. And it's within all of that the possibility of saying, well, what is it that we want, right? And I might not win in convincing you, you might not win in convincing me, and it might be messy, it might be unpleasant, but surely that's our responsibility to do that with one another and try and get it out. And that's I'm very, very excited about it. I'm sometimes very concerned about it, but I don't believe this thing that it's all done. And I will say that when I hear people say, "Oh, it's just you look at all them, they're all sheep or they're all stupid." It's the same when they say they're all gammons or they're all this, they're all racist, they're all conspiracists. This smearing, it's almost like a giving up on the sense of one's own responsibility, one's own duty. People don't like talking about duties, one's service, a sense of responsibility to engage and have your impact on things. Because it's a lot easier, isn't it? You say, well, everyone, you go in the pub and say, oh, they're all stupid, they're obviously going to do this. And you think it's not incumbent on you to try and win that at all. It's much more difficult to have rows, to try and win people over, sometimes look a bit like people mock you. But you say, well, this is, here I stand moment, and like what we're all going to do about it.
Yeah. Where do you think people, like, how widespread do you think is awareness to issues like this at the moment?
Here's the thing. I don't know, it's like all Pollyanna-ish, but I love people, right? And sometimes I'm infuriated by them, and I'm just like everyone else, right? But the thing about what's happened in the 20th century is that some people, some places have tried to change some things, and some of those things have gone really badly awry. And so that's left a legacy, right, for some things that is associated with the idea of change or the public doing things with bad outcomes. And I think we've had a dark period for that, and there was an eclipse. But there's a new moment that's happening. It's a new moment. I think you look at the sort of things that are happening, I said in the States, but look in Britain, right? New political organisations emerging, new organisations emerging, younger people who, even 25 to 35s have one view, but the 18 to 25s have another view. And whatever anyone thinks about some of the new groups or political parties, I'm astonished. Like we can I say where we are on the thing? It doesn't matter anyway. We're in a particular part of North London, but I've got some friends who they're from Islington. The kids happen to be they're mixed heritage, right? They're like really beautiful. They're like young. They're 18, and they're telling me how them and their friends they were voting reform. And I was astonished, right? Because you think, well, Islington, if you say that demographic, whatever that means, but inside London. Now, whether people like reform or not is not the point. The point is a lot of things are changing with different people. It's not this consensus, and those old left-right things, those notions of we've always done it this way before, they are done. And good riddance, right? And I it's like the Labour Party and the Conservative Party and the Lib Dems, I mean, they all really should split because they have very different views within them. You've got Momentum and others, and then you've got the kind of more blue Labour, and the same with the Conservatives, like this, and actually they've all been part of this kind of cosy, people call it the uni party, but this sense that we, this few, who all gone to the same universities, all speak the same, think the same, and they have no relationship to the mob, contemptuous and disdainful. And I actually think it's a really exciting time. So, and new things are springing up. You've got independents that were in Labour that are standing on issues like, we've seen there's a few independents that are saying around issues like Gaza and others. And whatever anyone's view of these things are, I think it's important to thrash them out and debate them, and it's going to be important. So it's exciting. I think everything's to play for right now.
Your body's immune system is under constant attack from flu, respiratory diseases and the common cold. And as we all know, vitamin D3 plays a vital role in maintaining a robust immune system. Now you can boost your immune system with Immune X365, our unique formulation that combines effective levels of vitamins D3, C and K2, as well as zinc and quercetin. This unique combination of nutrients in Immune X365 ensures maximum bioavailability of D3, thereby giving your immune system an optimum boost. Or try our new Immune X365 gummies, which are formulated specifically for children and young adults aged from 9 to 17 years old. Remember, all NutriHealth 365 orders come with free 2-day track delivery. Go to NutriHealth365.com to get yours now.
So when does it come to actual action? People who watch probably these kinds of channels are worried about things like the Great Reset. How do people actually avoid this or fight back against it, in your view?
Well, I think that it's imperative that people look to themselves to start taking a lead. And that can be locally. You can get involved together, but you can set up your own thing, get a little group, have a chat with some people, organise some leafleting, lobby councillors and MPs. We've got council elections coming up. When people go, oh, it doesn't really matter, these whole people, they're all in together with these different people. If you set up a self-fulfilling narrative that anything you do is not going to change anything, that will be the story. If you set up a situation, you say, well, at first, what we're going to do, we're going to put pressure on everyone. Actually, we might stand maybe I'll stand for a councillor or for an MP, or if I'm not, I'm going to organise something here locally, like people have done around low traffic neighbourhoods, low emission zones, like people have done around cash in certain areas, like people have done, obviously farmers have been doing, and we've been doing a lot of work with them, but we've done all sorts of things. We've got people to campaign around free speech, writing to the FCA and to the Bank of England, getting banks not to shut down ATM machines and banks, and getting cash maintained when we get them all to do. Sounds silly, right? Do you really want to do a response to these people? But yeah, when we get 60,000 of them in, which is not a lot, but they take note. When an MP gets 100 messages, they take note. The assisted dying bill. Do we want the state to be able to kill people? I know these are very difficult conversations, and they should be, right? Because many of us have been in the heart of them, right, with people we love. But it's a principle, right? If we start saying it's okay when that happens, many will say, well, that already happened, right, through lockdowns and COVID, right? And how older people were treated and vulnerable people do not resuscitate. Do we want that now for everyone? These questions are for all of us. They're not for a few people that went to Oxbridge or the Russell group of universities that all think the same. They're for all of us, right? And it's really important that we get that sense that we the people are the ones that can and inform it. So I would encourage everyone to get involved. I would love them all to get involved together. We've got groups around the country. We've got ambassadors. We've done all sorts of campaigns. We have events. We have what we call a 360 approach, where we do protests and rallies, but we lobby. We try and get MPs and councillors, but NHS trusts, universities. When there's different campaigns going on, we'll write and speak to everyone and encourage people to do that and to have an influence, but not just that. It's not like we just want to vote for someone, either vote and then like wait another few years. It's like make ourselves active, because if we have a really strong active base in Britain where there are people in every constituency, boots on the ground, that means all those people, all those current political entities and the others have to take note of what we're saying. So it won't matter what they say at Davos. And it won't matter what the WF says and the WHO says. That's becoming less and less relevant now anyway, in any case. Because what will happen is in this sovereign nation, citizens will say, we're not having that. And if you don't do that, we're going to get you out. And we'll stand and these are our views, and maybe we'll win people over to this, and we can change those things. And I'd always argue, right, that there was a big discussion about some things going on internationally. We've done some things on it. But our focus is to try and win over as many people in Britain, because if you can make sure that in our nation state we can have some sense of controlling the trajectory of things, that has massive influence and impact. If we remember when the vaccine mandates were going, we had friends in Canada and Australia said, well, we don't think you're going to stop that, but good luck. But when it stopped here, it was almost like everything stopped everywhere.
Yeah.
And look, all sorts of people did all sorts of things around that, and I don't want to overstate what was done or understate it, right? It's important we just are measured about all of this. But when they first did the lockdowns, they didn't think people would put up with it, and they had all the kind of psychological units, and they had all these kind of attempts to nudge and all that, and they were testing. It's really important that we know who we are and we assert ourselves, and that. So I would encourage everyone to do that more, to think about yourself and think about your role in history. I don't want to sound all dramatic, but it's important, right? Sometimes we've kind of been brought up and we think, humility is a good thing, but we think, oh, there's nothing I can do. Or we have a limited sense of our possibilities and a horizon and our scope, but we make the world every day. It's what happens. Yeah. Right. And I think that we need to refresh ourselves with a bit of that and a sense of possibility.
So we touched a little bit on the farmers, and speaking of kind of fighting for your rights and things like that, and mobilising and getting out there and having your voice heard. Obviously, I'm aware that you support the farmers. Where do you see this all going? There's been numerous protests, still no sign from the Labour government to let up or do a reversal of any decision. And now we're having strikes and a looming possibility of a bread shortage.
Yeah.
Where do you see all this going?
Well, I am all very encouraged by the fact that new things are springing up. So we've got a situation where up until a minute ago, it was business as usual. And we got a government. This is how disdainful they are, right? They'll say all these things before getting in, and then they just change it all up and just do it and think it's going to be business as usual. But they made a massive miscalculation. See, what it is the special advisors and these people who haven't got a relationship with the public anymore. Labour have given up their relationship with Labour. Conservatives, they don't want to conserve anything, and all of them hate the public. They haven't got a relationship with them. So what happens is they have this little story, right? Oh, the farmers, they won't care. People in the cities won't care about them because they're like, and they're all just a few wealthy people. It's like mental, right? It's like a nursery rhyme story they tell themselves. You're like, hello, who are you? Right? You see them going into the treasury and all that. You're like, oh, you lot aren't serious, right? I mean, you're just not serious. So that happens, and then, but what it is this is an existential problem for the farmers, right? It's like, it is really, that is it. There is no big profits being made. If they have to do this with the inheritance tax, they're done. So their backs are up against the wall. So what's going to happen is there isn't going to be an out. So all those people who thinking we'll just let it go a little longer and they're going to go away, that's not happening. And actually, Farmers to Action, who we've been very involved with, working with, and have been the second biggest farming organisation now in Britain for representing farmers, and direct action across the country. There's another 3 days of action happening this week, actually, 10th, 11th, 12th, up and down the country. There was some stuff done last week. People would have seen it. The NFU said that they were disappointed that Labour didn't tell them in advance so that they could tell their members. That was their response to some of the things that happened. And I think that the grassroots, the groundswell of farmers, hardworking, decent, full of spine, that the British public loves, are furious. They've never really wanted to come out and protest. They didn't want to have to do this. But talking about boots on the ground and tractors on the ground, it's that with drivers and pensioners and some of the students and the public, us, we the people, right? That's what's going to happen, and it's happening more and more. So there's going to be more protests. There'll be more challenges. And, you know, without giving too much away, there's a lot more that's coming down the line. I think the important thing that this government is got a number of issues got to do. We know that they're going to change, right? Look at what they said about net zero. Look at what they said about all these green things. They said they were going to keep doing it. They got this crazy Miliband guy doing mad stuff, but at the same time, they're saying we now recognise maybe, and the Tories beforehand as well, like they just say net zero and they just regurgitate these things. You're like, is anyone thinking about anything? What that means? What the consequences are, what it means for infrastructure, what does it mean for energy policy, what does it mean for keeping the lights on, what does it mean for growth and productivity? By the way, you've got a lot more people coming in here all the time. How are you going to pay for that NHS you think you like? And they're not having serious conversations, but all those things are going to have to change, right? And they're recognising it, but they're in a muddle, is being polite, because on the one hand they say that, or they realise they have to kind of separate themselves. They have to. So you can see Labour is trying to make these moves. They're trying to say we're going to do stuff that to limit the impact of civil servants, a bit quangos. We're going to try and limit some of the green things, but at the same time, their core philosophies are embodied by all of it, by ESG, by DEI, by net zero, and this is all going to come to a massive head with everything, right? And because the public are not happy with it, they're not happy about being treated as though they're all zombies and they're all racist and fascist, and that you can just imprison them when you let other people out of prison, or you don't even arrest them. They're not. People are fed up of it, and farmers have got a massive amount of support. But there's also all sorts of other people. Part of the assisted dying bill is that we've got millions of carers in this country, and what's happening to them, and their voices are not heard. And everyday people are sick to the bone of being treated as though they're lazy and stupid, and they lack the faculties to be involved in the debate and discussion. And again, it's like, what I'm really excited about is that when we've gone around the country and we've done different events with people, is seeing how brilliant some of the people are. With the low traffic neighbourhoods, right? You have people that businesses and resident citizens, and they understand all the issues, the local issues, and they're like very articulate, and they're much better than the councillors and the executive teams that run things. You're like, well, you should be running all this. I'm like often inspired. I sit there and go, God, you've said it all. I don't need to say it. Bath and Bristol and Oxford and Leeds and Sheffield and Manchester, all the places we've done events or we've campaigned, we've worked with people in Scotland. And the other thing that's really exciting is that it's breaking some of the taboos of who can work together. When I was in Scotland around the Hate Crime Act, you had people that were nationalists, that were unionists. You had really evangelists and religious people, and you had people that were completely secular, all agreeing and arguing against the Hate Crime Act, right? Which for people who don't know about the Hate Crime Act in Scotland, you should look it up. But you can even get potentially arrested for speaking in your own home, right? It's beyond the kind of an Orwellian moment, a Kafkaesque moment. So the thing is, there's lots of people fighting back. People are organised, but we all need more support. We need more people to be involved with it. I'm excited about it. I'm also aware of how dangerous it can be, and dangerous when you've got weak authoritarians. Weak authoritarians who don't have authority, and they can overreact. Because when you've got authority, you don't overreact.
Yeah.
You know, but these guys that are running things are dangerous, and we've seen that with people like, you know, just how some of this is playing out with the leadership of the police, not the rank and file so much, but they have to do what they're told. But it's or not or leave, and a lot of them are leaving, and some of it's all changing now. But where they're just doing things that everyone's seeing in the newspapers day in day out, and they're like grandmothers getting arrested, things for saying things in WhatsApp groups that are entirely reasonable.
Wasn't a 5-year-old recently arrested for being transphobic?
Yeah.
No, sorry, not arrested.
Not arrested.
Expelled.
Yeah,
That's it. Yeah, no, not arrested.
It was suspended.
Although it won't be long until they're getting arrested, probably.
Yeah, suspended. And the thing is, this is around both hate crimes and non-crime hate incidents, which are completely outrageous and need to go. And it's partly to do with the Hendon Police College, but the elite that are running the police that have appropriated. See, in the public sector, the ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and environmental, societal, and governance, which used to be corporate social responsibility, which is kind of okay, right? The idea that corporates will do some things that will be of benefit, even though they should really be doing things for their shareholders, but that's morphed into a zealotry around net zero. And in the same way, the DEI takes all these words that seem entirely reasonable, right, and then weaponizes them with this ideology that's really, really problematic. And we've seen that particularly with some of the issues around trans. We've just seen the nurse as well, who's actually just been suspended. She's been let from the NHS. She's been told she's going to go because she called someone a mister.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't make any of this up, right? He then uses all these outrageous racist terms, shouts at her, abuses her and all of that. And across the board, we've seen it. We've seen it with people saying things in WhatsApp groups. We've seen it with people posting. We've seen it with people asking questions, and children at schools. And there's many examples, right, of this happening. And our message really is like, so some of the teacher unions, who, by the way, were one in particular, the NEU, who had a very big influence on Boris and making that lockdown happen. But some of the teachers unions and some of the adults who should be giving a lead. It's not only an abdication of responsibility, but some of the attacks on our children, both through the things that have happened with lockdowns and then with imposing jabs on children, which should never happen, but also with mutilations and with telling people that you shouldn't have their parents know about it. I mean, people are very furious, quite rightly. And I don't know what's gone on in this world. What's happened is that some of these campaigners have done it without doing what I'm saying, right? Not winning the public over. They've kind of penetrated into a few institutions and they've dominated them. And people are very unhappy about it. And, you know, the thing is, you can't just start cancelling elections either. Like we've seen some of that happen in here. We've seen what's happening in France at the moment. you start doing lawfare and trying to like stop people standing and trying to get them in prison on trumped up charges. It's very dangerous, right? That is a powder keg that is very dangerous. And I'd like to say we do things differently in Britain. We've seen some really terrible things, but I know that the British people are resolute, and we got the strength to be clear and make sure these things get kicked into touch. Fortunately, there's a lot of really good people we work with. So Together does a lot of work with all sorts of people, like the Free Speech Union. Big Brother Watch is doing some really good stuff. You guys are all doing things. There are people like Don't Divide Us. They're free. Us for Them. A lot of different organisations who are arguing about these things on free speech, on our children, on issues of privacy and autonomy. And we're not going away. And we've changed quite a few things, right? In the last few years, we've had a big impact on things like the Department for Transport. We've changed legislation of funding of livable streets. We've had an impact on cash, as I said, on surveillance, on debanking. That was going to be made into legislation, but the snap elections stopped it. The point is we can change things. But, it goes back and forth like free speech does, right? Some people want it more, some people. It's a constant battle sometimes in a free world between those that would seek to limit us some more and those that think we can have some more freedom. And I think that's where we're at. I think we have a duty. People don't like talking about duties anymore, but we have a duty and a responsibility to make sure this country is what we want it to be.
Do you think that there will ever be a restoration of trust in public sectors?
I think that there will be a restoration of trust because if we decide that we assert ourselves, and then that's how trust is created. Because the deficit in trust and the gap of it now is as a consequence of technocrats that have for 3 decades just treated everyone with contempt and mugged us all off. And so why wouldn't you be contemptuous? We had all the spin, all the yarn, and the latest incarnation of it was all the Twitter files and the lockdown files and the spy units and the censors. And you're like, really? But the way that it gets restored, I think, is through us having a stake in it and a say in it and believing in ourselves. And so, because having no trust in anything, having not trusting anything at all is a problem. If we can't trust and we can't have a sense of fellow citizens or a sense of shared principles, virtues. I mean, Socrates talking about virtues, and you know what everyone even thinks about Socrates, right? The whole idea of having some principles and values that we all enshrine and we think are important is really crucial, right? It's not just, oh yeah, whatever, and I don't trust anyone, and that's a problem. And that's a problem also for us all who say we're in this, you know, whatever this freedom movement is, because understandably, some people have become so upset and annoyed that I think sometimes they think that you can't trust anyone. And we see it. It's like, you're this, you're that, everyone's it. And it's almost like, well, the sense, how do we get trust? We get trust through doing things, testing them out, seeing if it works, developing relationships, and seeing what kind of impact we can have on things. And yeah, I just think that the alternatives are too terrible to contemplate. I don't want to see that happen, so I'm doing what I'm doing. I'd like to see other people doing it. You know, this experiment that we've got, which is what it is in what people call the Western world, but like in Europe, that then got, you know, internationalized in many ways, but in different forms. The Enlightenment, the Renaissance, you know, the traditions, the religions, and the combination of all those things, and the sense of having a society where everyone can have a say in it, is not the same everywhere around the world. I mean, people just think like, you live in Britain, oh yeah, but like obviously vast swathes of places don't have freedoms. If we do this, someone knocks on the door and you get taken away. And we've had a bit of that in Britain now as well recently. But my point is that it's not given, even though people may very understandably think it's a God-given right to have these things, but in the world of humans, we have many people who do not have the ability to speak freely, and we have geopolitical interests where some would just get rid of that. And we have a responsibility. And I think what happens in Britain, what we do in Britain is watch that around the world, right? Even though we're a small nation, 5th or 6th biggest economy, but also at the level of ideas, we have a big influence and our impact can be enormous. And like with the jab mandates, right, when people looked at that from around the world, what we're doing, when they see the light of freedom shine and us do things here, that is infectious.
Yeah.
You know, Tony Blair Institute has a really disproportional influence on what's going on around the world, and his obsession with digital IDs and saying things that lots of different demographics will like, right? Well, either you get into the pub with it, or it will stop migration, illegal migration. Say all these things, or prisoners. They've realised smartly as well, don't just impose it like with vaccine passports. Let it be, it's more insidious, right? It's like, make it so it's really easy, but you have to do it in different places, a bit of facial recognition and a bit of cameras here, and have it. Wallop, all of a sudden you got this whole thing, and it's a social credit system. So I think those kind of things where he's pushing those things are really problematic. And but also I don't want to give him too much juice, right? I mean, he's like, you know, frankly, we've got a whole new generation of people who are going to make a big mark and impact in history, I think, right, that are coming out now. There's lots of great farmers, people that are drivers, people at universities that are not going down the road that the established norms say. I'm excited about it. And I would say to everyone as well, don't let all that nonsense, because I know it's difficult when people say certain buzzwords, but don't let that nonsense don't, when people start calling names and they start saying certain things, it can be a bit scary. That cancel culture, particularly a few years ago, if you start like you're a transphobe and you're a racist and you're a conspiracist, you're at work, you don't want people hearing, but flash these things out, flush them out, have these conversations, talk to people we disagree with. It's important we talk to people we disagree with, right? Win them over or don't win them over, but someone else is listening. Can we get them involved? Do we have the confidence in our ideas? Can we? What are we going to make of all of this? I think that's the thing. And then people like Tony Blair and Davos, then they become far less important. The thing about Tony Blair is that, because I think it's important not to make anyone too iconic, right? Is that we had a whole period. So without boring anyone, I'm sure everyone knows anyway, but just the whole period of the 80s and then the 90s was a seismic shift. It was like, it was the end of one thing and the start of another. But within all of that, what ended with the end of the Cold War, with what happened with Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, and a battle that went on between the old left and the old right, is in many ways the what was called the right then, they won the economic argument. They won it wholeheartedly and they smashed it. But what was called the left, who was in defeat, they kind of penetrated the cultural institutions and became what they evolved into what people now call woke, right? So they won the cultural arguments. So it was a mad hodgepodge, and we had globalization happen within the kind of freedom market thing happen. So you had a number of trends all happen. The reason I say all of that is Tony Blair comes to embody the technocratic assault on the public. Spin, contempt, if you think about Iraq and what happened there, that sort of embodies it.
Yeah.
But this obsession with digital ID, this sense in which you kind of like, you have all these nice press celebrity things, but it's all spin, and he really detached. I could have big conversations about what the Labour movement meant, whether it was good or not, and all that. They're all important conversations, but he really ended the relationship with the public, or with what Labour was, right?
Yeah.
And that came to really become the thing for like the Blair and Cameron years. We saw like years of that technocratic impositions that just continued.
Why do you think it is that he still has so much power or influence?
Because we've got a
scenes?
weak generation of 3 decades of technocratic nobodies, for the most part, who have no real relationship to the public, to the demos, have become completely estranged and have been under no pressure. Up until Brexit, they've been under no pressure, and up until this populist movement now has happened, right? So it's completely different. So we've seen it now. It's all cascading because people are not just putting up with things and going along with it. And so he's had a disproportionate influence because, like all these, you have focus groups and you have consultants and people who haven't wanted to take responsibility leading. The old Jack Welches who ran corporations or made decisions led from the front. They're like, no, everyone's risk averse. Oh, don't do that. What do you think? This sense of our virtues of having leadership and having values, inspiring people, but also taking decisions and say it stands and falls with me. That's gone a lot. And winning the public. The thing about the 20th century is the public shaped so much of it, right? And a lot of it was about fights around ideas, small state, big state. Do you think that Hayek or Milton Friedman was right, or John Maynard Keynes or Karl Marx, right? These were big debates and discussions. And that all of that when you had people that were really smart from all sides that were arguing these things, and you had the public often that were self-taught, who were involved in those conversations, who fought for them, right? Either way, you might have been a conservative and you wanted a small state, family, queen, country, or you'd be a radical, right? And you wanted to transform it. Now that all went, but the public now, the lion is beginning to roar in different ways, and that can go lots of ways. I'm not trying to overstate it either, but I don't want to understate it. There's a lot that's there. There's a lot at stake, and I think that Tony Blair's had a big influence because he's been able to have a very, very good organisation. When I say, don't take that quote and use it like that, but that he's going to have a very good ability to execute one of those things as a consultant, as an advisor, someone who's like had a couple of terms in office and knows how to talk to technocrats. He's like, Campbell and him and Darling and all those guys, they know how the elite thinks. They know, and they've helped shape some of those things, and they're globalists and they have very particular outlook. So he's been good. This is what they want to hear, right? It's self-fulfilling prophecy. But people have talked about the Overton window a lot during lockdowns and everything. We shift all that up, and all of a sudden, look, oh, the EU don't look so clever now. And actually, all these things that are happening, oh, hold on, we're not going to necessarily be able to do that. Lots of people just made fun out of Donald Trump, called him lots of names. Some people really disagree with the tariffs. You could have a really good conversation about the efficacy of them or not. But the thing is, everything's up for change.
So what is upcoming for Together at the moment? Any campaigns that we need to look out for?
Yeah, well, we've got a number of them. So we've got the assisted dying bill that we've done a lot of work on. We've been doing calls to action, getting people to write to MPs, go and see their MP, call people, the cabinet, campaign, do videos, get leaflets all around their constituencies, let everyone know. Most likely the vote's going to be the 16th of May. They've changed all the safe checks already, the safeguards on there, the ones they said that were there, even, notwithstanding the point about the principle about the state killing people. So we're doing a lot of work on that. We've got a campaign around both digital ID and surveillance and central bank digital currencies, not gone away, and encouraging people to have their voices heard about that, where we see all sorts of things from facial recognition systems and sports stadiums, in shopping centres, in supermarkets, but also with in terms of driving and cars and cameras and LTNs and others, and linking the points about surveillance, writing again locally and nationally, organising, campaigning. We are working with Farmers to Action, so there's all sorts of days of action that are happening now across the UK. Again, we're going to be in Wales in May and other places. They're going to have the Senate elections next year, and more local elections. And we are going to keep encouraging people to get involved, have their voice heard. Obviously, the local council elections, we're encouraging everyone to vote. I think that what we've seen now with a government that's far fewer people voted for, but it's got a big majority. So people think it doesn't matter. Oh, don't worry about voting. Well, that's what we. So you kind of think it's not the only thing to do, but it's certainly something that can be done. And there's a lot of people that are standing. I think that Reform's got a big brand, right? So everyone knows, like the 1,500 or 1,600 people are standing there. But the UK Freedom Alliance is another organisation, and they're working with 6 or 7 smaller freedom parties, libertarians and others. You've got the SDP and others that are all standing. And I think it's important to have conversations with people in your areas and make sure you register to vote and make a difference. And I would say that, like with the Trump moment, the sense that you can do something and give a message is one part of something, but I don't want to have low horizons. I think it's important that we can do much more as well. So we're going to keep campaigning on all these fronts. At togetherdeclaration.org, people can see our campaigns, and at TogetherDec. But you can we write to people. We've got a big signatory list, but we want to get more people involved, and we are committed to these things. We're also doing something with some people on some vaccine harms, which will be more released in a bit, and on a range of issues. We're going to keep making these points that it's up to us to have an impact. So that's the near future. Obviously, there's a lot more coming down the line, but we can talk a bit more about that.
If there was to be a freedom party that got into government, would you want to get involved with that? Would you write any draft legislation at all? How would you get involved?
Yeah, I think that we want to have an influence on everyone and everything. Like people say, "Oh, you went on mainstream media." Yes, of course I did. I want to go. If I could be on the BBC and Channel 4 and Channel 5 and Sky and all that all the time as well, I would be. Because I want to get as many people and all of us into all those places. I used to be on those places quite a lot. They stopped inviting me during some of the lockdown things. And equally, right, I want to have an influence. I want us all to have an influence on all of the people who are in politics. I'd like more of us to all be involved in there. I'd like more of us to be all involved in media and different areas than we can be. And I think that we already have influenced. I know that we've influenced them. Look, during lockdowns, we did stuff with Steve Baker and a range of other people. Graham Brady, the chair of the 1922 committee, and we talked to some other people on certain issues, right, that were good. I mean, like Diane Abbott's been brilliant. She's had a moment, right, her real big moment on assisted dying, and some people in Labour were really good on digital ID, not many. But we will work with all sorts of people on issues that are really important. And we have written reports, and we'll do research, and we work with younger people to bring them in. And I'm not saying we will never. We say to people, if you want to stand as an independent. We've said till now, generally what we've done in elections up until now is we said vote, and these are the 4 or 5 questions. You should put pressure on them, ask the questions, email them, phone them, go to the surgery, make your voices heard, campaign. When they write back to them. So it's not just that, but also, I think it's really encouraging. And if you look at what we say and what some of the new political groups and parties are saying, you'll be able to make your own mind up what we think. And we think that we've shaped quite a lot. The discussion around no to net zero, the discussion around abolishing inheritance tax for everyone, the discussion around cash, the insistence on free speech for everyone, which still some people who say they're for free speech, but it's for me, not for thee.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. We have to be careful, right? That people say, well, and I have to remind everyone that you can't, it's not partial. We either have free speech or we don't. You can't say, well, I don't like their political views, so we want to shut them up, right? Then we don't have it, then none of us have it. So I think on these crucial issues, we can have our voices heard, and I think that people should stand, and people like new organisations, new activities, and absolutely, it's no secret. People have seen the stuff that we've done. We've had different people. We've had Nigel Farage, we've had Rupert Lowe, we've had Ben Habib, we've had all sorts of people speaking and at events that we've done, and also we've spoken to other people, and we think that this new populist moment is really, but we all think the populist moment is important. But the crucial thing to remember is that the influence of the last 3 decades has been so big that no matter how much we like someone or we like people, that the pressure on people is enormous when they get into positions, and when they start getting civil servants not doing what they have said they would do, or they start getting the state, the apparatus, or the Ministry of Defence or others, they say, well, this is what you've got to do. And I would like to see people be able to say, well, I've got a mandate, a proper good mandate from the public, and it's not me speaking, it's them.
Yeah.
So we want to represent that to people, and we want to hold everyone accountable. So we'll be friends with some people, and we'll be supportive and all that, but we just recognise this is a tricky terrain and arena, and we want to put pressure on people to hold everyone accountable and keep them honest, because it's, in the end, it's the public that keeps everyone honest.
Yeah. So where can people find you personally? Where can people find Together, and how can they support you? Togetherdeclaration.org is the website. @TogetherDec is on most handles. I'm @AlanVibe. You can find me now and again with GB Resistance, the anti-Tony Blair, the antidote to Tony Blair. Love it. And you'll find me on a street somewhere talking, sometimes people calling me names, get engaging, trying to just say this is what we should do. Try and give a bit of a lead by example, but also be inspired by others up and down the country. Have a look out because we're doing a lot of things around the country, and we've got some nice plans as well about some other stuff that's coming up. But I really encourage. I think it's great what you guys are doing. You're always there at the demos and the protests, and I've seen you right the way through. Wicked, the whole team. You should turn the cameras on yourselves as well. But I mean, it's really good, and this is the sort of thing, the lifeblood that we need. It's really important. So yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. And it was nice seeing you again. Pleasure. Thank you. Thanks. For more exclusive behind-the-scenes content, please be sure to subscribe to our Patreon. It really helps us cover the cost of any live streams, events, protests, or anything that we do. You'll also be seeing any behind-the-scenes footage and anything that we might be doing with Defiance Records. Resistance GB's new series, 1,000 Words, has me, portrait artist Jake Fern, talking to some of the key figures in the movement. Half my brain concentrating on having a conversation, and the other half on making a painting. Do I succeed at either? You be the judge.